What's going on, everyone? Welcome into another episode 2 officially of the Sick Podcast with Draft Vogel, going through all kinds of NFL draft stuff. Matt's coming on here in a little bit. We got a good episode. We're going to talk about some scouting safeties. Specifically, it's the hardest position to play on defense. It's one of the toughest to evaluate, I think. Matt disagrees. We'll have plenty of discussion coming up right here. Go ahead. Let's hit it, Sammy. Let's get it rolling.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. With Draft Vogel.
With the first pick in the 2021 NFL Draft. The first pick in the 2022 NFL Draft. With the first pick in the 2023 NFL Draft.
The sickest NFL draft show. It's gonna be sick.
And this is the sickest podcast, an NFL draft show on the market. Let's go ahead and get Matt up in here because we've got some good discussion, some good stuff.
What's up, everybody?
Did I kill you last night prepping for this thing? Like putting the thing together? Did I keep you up too late? I'm sorry.
Our schedules are just so different. You're Mr. Insomniac, and so people who don't know my background, I was in gaming for a long time and streaming and playing tournaments and stuff like that. And so, I was used to being up at 2 or 3 in the morning, and now I've totally transitioned back. I want to be part of the 5 a.m. club. So I get up at like 5:45. You were ready to have like a 2-hour conversation last night about this. I was like, dude, we got to bang out this show outline, man. Like, I'm ready to go to bed. It was like 10:45 and I was complaining.
Yeah. You're like, it's okay. It's okay. Cause I'm usually up till 2 in the morning and sometimes closer to 3. And then I'm back up at 7:30. It's just constant grind life,
Yeah. Also having a kid. Yeah.
Well, that does it too.
Having a daughter makes a difference.
Yeah, it does make a difference. You're right. But anyways, man, safeties. We've spent a lot of time talking about the position overall and how we look at it. The first thing that I did want to start with on this episode was basically the top. Last episode we started things off. We talked about cornerbacks and the top 5 things that you're looking for in a cornerback prospect. The 5 most important traits, really. I guess we're going to really start there, and I'm going to source this directly from Jacksonville Jaguars general manager Trent Baalke, who's one of the most respected general managers in talent evaluators in the NFL. Just the way that he's been able to spot it, the work that he's done with the 49ers and the Jaguars since he's he managed that awful Urban Meyer mess. Like, that was kind of to come out on top of that was something. But you got the 49ers. Obviously, he did a great job helping out with that, building them, getting them ready, set for a Super Bowl. He focuses very highly on the trenches, but he's basically got these 5 things that he's looking for, top 5 things in a safety that I would want to kind of read over quickly, and then we'll expand on it because I know, Matt, you have a lot of thoughts on this. Football IQ and instincts is number 1. Number 2 is range, run and pass. Number 3 is tackling and efficiency. Number 4 is ball skills. And number 5 is man cover skills. And he notes without number 1, the IQ and instincts, the other 4 become less impactful. So
yeah.
Basically, we're talking about a super high IQ position, something that, you have to understand the concepts, the different schemes, the different things that are coming at you, and you have to process extremely quickly.
Yeah. So the first thing that I noticed when you sent me this, like the full breakdown of what it was, and then we were talking about it, and we didn't actually talk about it last night, but I was thinking about it, I'm like, the one thing that isn't in there that used to always be in there for safety discussion, size. Like, if they're under 6 feet and 200 pounds, you're not playing safety for us. Like, that was the case for almost all across the league, up until really just like last probably 10 years or so, with really the last 5, you're seeing it become more prolific across like every team, right? So I pulled up a list of like some of the guys that super high graded on PFF, names that a lot of people know, that just would not be considered, safeties for a high amount of playing time. They would have concerns about their body breakdown right at that size and weight. You got like Jimmy Ward, who's 5'11 and 195, right? And you think about Jimmy Ward, and what he's good at is his aggressive run fits and physicality, but he's 5'11 and 195, showing that most of the stuff that from that safety position is about the instinct and willingness to be able to come do it, and then security and tackling. The whole like I gotta have Cam Chancellor coming down a hill hard and blowing people up and asserting authority over the middle of the field. It's like everybody knows that we're protecting people over the middle of the field. So like having situations where you have a guy that's like really like scaring, like it's not as scary anymore. So, if guys are like doing that type of stuff, it's not as valuable as much anymore. And so you aren't going to see as many guys that or as many teams as like really coveting that guy that, just blows the hell up out of somebody, because like, yeah, that's nice. But, Jamal Adams does that, and he's been getting ripped the last couple of years in terms of his value at safety. Obviously he's been hurt, but so that was one of the big things. So you got like Antoine Winfield Jr., another one, 5'10", 202. Buda Baker, 5'10", 195. Quandre Diggs is 5'9", 200. And Tyrann Mathieu, who, while not, what he once was, when he was first breaking into the league, he was like a good example of this, because he was truly an outlier at the position. And he fell because of, off-field concerns. He got dismissed from the LSU team and stuff like that. But there were also legitimate size concerns about his ability to be able to hold up over the course of the season and multiple seasons, and thus like what a second contract potential was going to be like. But he's proved to be a great player, because his instincts were so phenomenal and his processing was phenomenal. So when you're talking about instincts and understanding what's going on in front of you, I think a lot about like not just what the offense is trying to do, but complete understanding of your scheme, where your help is going to be, on certain situations, because it's going to be different in certain situations. You're going to look or leverage your help a little bit differently on 3rd and 7 than you are on 1st and 15. You know what I mean? So that type of stuff.
No, that's very fair, man. And it's a great point that you raise about the size. But size is missing. Specifically bringing up Mathieu, I think, is a really great example, because look at how that opened up, the draft for the next few years with some of these guys. You just went through a list of guys that are kind of small digs right there in that Tyrann Mathieu range. But, if you remember 2 years after Matthew's drafted, you go to 2014 and you've got LaMarcus Joyner, who's 5'6", getting drafted in the 4th round by the Rams, and Joyner's had a pretty decent career, all things considered.
He's still in the league. You know what I mean? That's enough of a signal.
That's twice, almost 3 times the average NFL career that he's had in terms of length. So I think that's a great point that you bring up, that is lacking size. And instinct and the willingness to tackle is really the big things, which also plays into range. Range is, I think there's a couple things to range that are really important to kind of discuss. Range isn't just about speed. It's not about athletic ability. It's not about any of that. Range is really more so about how well do you pursue the play,
and anticipate,
not letting guys get past.
Yeah, because the initial part of the range is when are you triggering? You know what I mean? So it's not just like understanding like what your speed is relative to where everything is going and seeing the flow and the congestion. It's also when you're triggering. You know what I mean? So that's the beginning stage of range.
Correct. Yeah. Right. Which is, you see guys, Minka talked about this, I think, when he went on, the NFL Network has that series. Maybe it's Game Pass that puts it out. I forget. NFL puts it out, whatever it is, where these players sit there and they break down their tape and stuff. Yeah, Baldy, yeah. Yep. And Minka talked about this. This was a couple of years ago, where he talked about one of the things that he learned when he got to the league was how to pursue properly as a deep safety. It was a very difficult thing to do, because a lot of times guys will over pursue, right? And they're chasing a play down. And what happens is, if you're 20 yards back, 15 yards back a lot of the time, so you can't be running full out to get this play, you kind of have to stay 10 yards behind it and work your way over. So there's a lot of field to range discipline. There's a lot of IQ that goes into that as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everything, these next 4 things that we're going to talk about is all going to go trace back to IQ, and instinct. But that's really what it is if you've got to have that, not just, being able to play sideline to sideline. That's great range, but being able to pursue a play properly, chase that ball carrier down the right way, and then, like you said, trigger yourself so that when you're in that deep coverage, ball's coming deep, you get to the spot, you break up the play or get the pick.
Yeah, exactly. And you brought up something that made me think of last week. I was going through and realized that I had actually misspoke when I was talking about play speed versus foot speed, where I kind of explained foot speed with the definition that I meant for play speed. So when we're talking about range, especially at the safety position, a lot of that comes from your ability to increase your play speed. I meant to say play speed, not foot speed. Increase your play speed because of that mental processing or anticipation or instincts, that type of stuff that we're talking about, the mental aspect, to be able to elevate your foot speed beyond whatever it is. And make plays on the football. And then also when we're talking about that mental processing or the instincts and the mental acuity is, okay, if I'm in a situation and I realize, okay, I was actually late to trigger on this route break, on a ball over my head. Now, okay, let's say I'm like a solid, moderate athlete, right? Now I have to go ahead and use in my head. Now I'm going to go and try to break up this play as best I can. I have 2 options. Am I going to go play the football or am I going to go play the man? You know what I mean? So being able to also make those decisions on the fly as well.
Yeah, and that's a tough decision to make too, because a lot of times you don't know where that ball is if you're late on the break and on the route. So
you got receivers that are good with late hands, or they'll show you something early to make you think that they're about to catch it to get you physically involved. Yeah.
Oh man, some guys are really good at that too. I've seen a few plays here recently where I've been like, boy.
DB, man, it's so hard. DB is so hard. It's so hard to play.
Yeah. We were talking about corner being very difficult to play because, it's really more so about reaction than it is about, so being a reactive athlete, as opposed to being a pure athlete. Whereas safety, I think you're a little bit more of an athlete, but you're still reactive in the sense that, okay, everything that you're doing is predicated on, like you said, your trigger point. When are you getting into that release? When are you taking off running? When are you getting that? So, no, it's the hardest position to play on the defense, I think. And that's saying a lot, because we're talking about guys that have, a job where their job is to go up against a guy 60 pounds, 70 pounds heavier than them and try to beat them in a fist fight, essentially.
Yeah, they don't get paid like it, right? They don't get paid like it's the hardest thing to do, because, obviously sacks end plays incredibly quickly, right? And they're incredibly disruptive, and the things that safeties do well, you don't really see very often because they're off the TV copy. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of people that understanding of safety play is not super high, and that's okay. But that's part of why we want to have this discussion, to be able to differentiate good safety play from average or poor safety play, and then also be able to put it in context between who that player is within their system, right? Because so often these words like trash or garbage or wash, all those things get thrown around, and it's well, is he being asked to be a pivotal cornerstone player in the system anymore? Should we be grading him on that curve? That doesn't seem fair to me. So sorry, I'm getting totally tangential here, but and that's going to happen occasionally. But I did kind of want to expand on some of those 5 things as I was talking about the play speed. So the 5 things that Balky was talking about, when we were talking about corners, and I was talking about the position specific skills, that come in beyond just the core critical, the 5 critical factors that you use for every position. When I'm looking at it for safeties, I'm really replacing their line of scrimmage skills with their range. But most of everything is still the same. I'm still going to grade their man coverage. I'm not going to weight it as highly. I'm going to have ball skills in there in terms of like how they're playing things in front of them, low, high, with their back to the quarterback, above their head, stuff like that. Their run support and open field tackling is going to shoot way up, especially now. And this is a good opportunity to talk about some of the transition of philosophy in the NFL and how many teams are running a high percentage of match quarters that require those safeties to be quick downhill players in the D gap in the run game. So
now the one thing I don't think we talked a lot about last week, and it's going to kind of sound funny, I think, when I say it, we didn't talk a lot about what exactly match quarters is.
Okay.
So maybe for fans and stuff, that might be a good thing to kind of break down. So when you're talking match quarters specifically, what is that?
Yeah. So people hear the term cover 4, and when I was growing up in high school and everything, I was always just taught 4 deep, 3 under, right? It's just got these 4 deep defenders. They got to cover 1/4 of the field straight back behind them, nothing else, whatever. And that exists as like a
I think people are familiar with that too.
From Madden.
People are familiar with that too from Madden. Exactly, right. That's what I was going to say. So,
and that exists in a prevent style, right? Like people still do that, but more what you're seeing now is the match quarters or match cover 4.
And so the difference between the cover 4 on Madden and match 4 is what?
Yeah, so you're actually creating a read situation where the safety and the cornerback in cover 4, the cornerback, usually a good tell, you're going to see the cornerback with their hips open at a 45 degree to the formation, about 7 yards off usually. And that gives them that cushion because there's usually like the 5-yard ceiling, the 5 or 7. As you get higher up in levels, they start to push that ceiling a little bit higher to kind of stress defenses a little bit more. But at the base level, you're talking 5 yards. Safety and the cornerback are both reading the number 2 receiver. So not the outside receiver, the guy who's inside the outside receiver. They're reading number 2. And this is just in base match quarters against a 2x2 set, with 2 receivers. They're both reading off the number 2 receiver. If number 2 breaks out within 5 yards, the cornerback is then attaching. And then the safety is taking number 1 over the top. Because the likelihood is if you've got number 1 or number 2 breaking out, you've got number 1 breaking in at some point or continuing to run vertical up the field. So you've got safety with leverage over the top to get everything over the top of that, but also match any in-breaking routes. So that's what we were talking about, match coverage. And then you've got the play side linebacker or overhang defender, whoever that is, that's playing that hook curl to flat area.
Yep.
So when we're talking match quarters, there's more communication. Yeah. Sorry, we didn't go into it very well. Yeah. You're right.
No, but that's basically what it is. So it's potentially what you're doing is if you have 2 underneath routes, it turns into cover 2 essentially. Is basically what we're talking about. So it's a versatile flowing coverage that reacts to the play. That's as is developing. And a lot of teams are running this right now in the NFL. I mean, it's really taken over the overall philosophy and the way that most rosters are constructed, which gets into what we were kind of talking about was, you're talking about moving into our next talking point, which is the evolution due to this change in the philosophy and the overwhelming use of it. Going from a Earl Thomas, Cam Chancellor type safety duo, free strong, to more of a current match quarters, 3 safeties on the field at the same time.
Yeah, so you're seeing a lot of 3 safety systems, and that's not their base, right? That's not their base set. But when we're talking just in terms of, I don't think you're going to see a lot of teams that are coming out, in the first play of the game. Say a team comes out with 2 wide tight ends, a fullback, and a wide receiver. I don't think you're going to see them match with 3 safeties like that. That's not
no. But how many teams do that now?
On first down,
how many teams come out with
first play of the
game?
Down? I mean, the Chiefs started to a little bit more last year. They were running actual 13. They weren't running a fullback. They were running 13 personnel and stuff.
City Homer again.
Yeah,
Can't
I
see
gotta
Homer
go.
again.
Yeah, I gotta
There we
go put $1 in the swear jar. Sorry guys. I'm just saying, like, if you want to look at where offenses are going, I think Andy Reid's probably a solid place to look. You know,
No, that's a great point. But my point is more so 70% of your defense right now is being run out of nickel, which is 3 safeties now at this point. So
I just say a
kind of
lot of
where
teams run it with
the
3.
debate is.
Yeah. A lot of teams run it with 3, but you can run it like I'm just saying you can run it multiple ways. But we are having to have more safety types on the field to try to match some of the spread formations with the larger body types still on the field, right? Because they're trying to out leverage us with matchups to try to get us to match in a certain way. And we're like, no, we're not going to do that. We're still going to keep a DB type on the field, but we're going to have a little bit bigger body to be able to, supplement some of that that physicality and that run defense that we're giving up by putting him on the field instead. But the philosophy of what we're trying to have here is, and this comes from, and I don't have the root of this, so somebody please don't reply and roast me on Twitter. Actually, feel free to do that. That's fine, whatever. But I'm pretty sure a lot of this, the prevalence of this really started in the Baylor and TCU systems in the Big 12, to be able to respond with numbers over the top of all the empty looks that they were getting. So when you talk about Saban's match systems, he's always talking about wanting to get 3 over 2 or 4 over 3, right? You want to get 3 defenders over 2 receivers or 4 defenders over 3 potential threats. And the only way to do that is to play with the middle of the field open. If you roll a safety down, then you've got a guy that's now in the box instead of hanging out over in coverage to be able to leverage against the numbers outside.
Right.
So we started seeing a lot of that. And then that's when the third safety started coming in, as you started to see the 3-3-5s come in, and things like that.
And it's funny too, because you're talking about this, right? With the base basically starting in college. This trickled up into the league. Which 5-6 years ago, I do remember people just absolutely just crapping on this all the time, nonstop.
Just gimmicky, yeah.
Right. Oh, well, 3 DBs. How does that translate? That doesn't. People would knock players coming out because they played in a system like this. Oh, that's not an NFL system. Well, it is now.
Yeah. and this is a great point to get kind of back to the whole discussion of finding a way to evaluate that eliminates the system that they're in from pigeonholing how you're evaluating somebody. Because the situation that they're in, like, they're being used that way because of the players that they have on that roster, and then the way that the coach believes in the general philosophy of the team, right? Like, that may change, but like I'm saying, like, okay, does this player have all of these traits to be able to be successful maybe in another system? Do they show like good enough mental processing to be successful in the system they're in right now? Well, then there's reason to believe that he has good enough mental processing to be able to learn a new system. It might take a little time to adjust, but learn a new system and then apply those same physical traits that they have into the new system and still be successful. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. So I'm just like, I'm trying to undercut that whole, like, this isn't a real system, like blah, 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 blah. I'm like, no, it wasn't at the time, but it is now. So maybe we need to take it a little more seriously.
It's funny because football trickles up and it trickles down. You know what
it's
I'm
just
saying?
So cyclical. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a constant like trade-off, like you're seeing things trickle down, from the NFL into college into high school a lot, especially now with the money and the different NIL stuff. But then you got the stuff that trickles up. And a lot of times you just see it's formations, it's schemes, it's the Wildcat. Different things just kind of they shift. They trickle up, they trickle down, and it's funny how that works. It's in a constant cycle, and we're always afraid to, if I grade this guy too highly, or if I think too highly of this guy, it's gonna be a problem, because his system. So yeah, for the most part, I think especially when we're talking safeties, yeah, you do have to eliminate the system, right, and evaluate the prospect from what they are capable of doing, as opposed to what they ran in the system coming out of college.
Yeah. And I don't necessarily mean like eliminate it entirely, but I just want to put it within context of what they were asked to do. Right. And then see, okay, well then are they able to do other things? Maybe they are, and they just weren't asked to, So then I got to look at other areas of games, and try and figure out, if they have some traits that show up in other areas. Are they playing a lot of punt block, or punt return? Those are good areas to understand how somebody is able to like sort through traffic, play with physicality, finish plays. It's really, a lot of it is about competitive toughness. So when we're talking about the safety position, that is a big trait and capability, is competitive and physical and mental toughness, because you are the last line of defense. And oftentimes you're asked to play in disadvantageous situations for yourself, right? Like you're a safety. I'm having to come down and fill in a lane and break down and tackle a quick running back or a receiver in space. You know what I mean? Like that's not an advantage for a general safety type, or what we're used to with safety bodies, right? But I'm asking that guy to come down quickly and break down and play with physicality and tackle an athlete in space. Like that's not an awesome job for somebody. Like that's not a net win for a safety usually, right? Like in terms of body type, like in terms of like generally what we're asking, like we want them to be successful at doing this, but in terms of dominating that phase, like we're talking about somebody who needs to be successful at doing that. We're talking about somebody that needs to have the range to be able to cover as a deep player over the top of routes and play the ball in the air. Hopefully match up against tight ends that are bigger physical bodies. You know what I mean? They're the wide range of jobs that safeties are asked to do. It's extensive,
Absolutely. No, I'm agreeing with that. But I think with, when you're talking about size, right? And obviously we talked about some of the smaller guys that play the safety position very effectively. But, I guess receivers are getting bigger because DBs were bigger, right? Like that's been the evolution. Everybody's looking for a running back essentially in the open field. They don't want these old school wide receivers anymore. They want the guys to be 6'2", 200 pounds and run after catch freaks. And I think it's because you already had this size on the back end for the most part, right? So it's about getting that matchup advantage. When they're in the open field, you got a receiver that could make a play by breaking a tackle from a safety because, it's the same body type. So I guess, more so now, that's one of the evolutions from the offensive standpoint to combat safeties.
Yeah, so I see guys like Mingo getting pushed up into the middle of the second round, and like Jonathan Mingo, like receivers like that, and you're seeing these big physical guys like starting to take over a little bit more as defenses have started to become fast, speedier, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think Mingo's going to be great, honestly.
I do too, yeah.
I think I was surprised that he wasn't one of the first round picks, when we went with what was the guy, the USC Pitt receiver, Addison.
Oh, Jordan
I was surprised
Addison,
that he went first round. Yeah, I was surprised he was picked over Mingo, to be honest. But
different flavors, man. Totally different flavors, yeah, in terms of what you're looking for and what you need.
Addison's old school wide receiver. That's the thing,
Well, old school. Which old school are we talking about? Because he's like,
okay,
you know what I mean? Like he's like Reggie 2000s. Wayne, like
right, early
like,
2000s.
Like Marvin Harrison, that like silky, like smooth hipped guy. Yeah, he's not Andre Johnson. You know what I mean?
No, no, I'm talking. That's one early 2000s.
Yeah.
Like Wayne, I think was actually the comp that I had for him. They're very similar.
So,
but anyways, sorry, not trying.
Yeah, I did. So you did have something you said that I wanted to jump into and segue with. So when you were talking about these smaller safety body types, and I brought it up at the beginning, and now we're talking about the evolution with having to have faster guys on the field. You need a more versatile, homogenous body type to be able to do all of these jobs that you're asked to do, because now you're not just like playing 78% as a free safety and can just drop back all the time, right? So with that, also safeties have become one of the higher percentage injured, or one of the more frequently injured positions in the league, because you got these guys now that are a little bit smaller body types that are still having to play these physical responsibilities that we were talking about of having to go down and fit runs, and squeeze plays against like pulling guards and stuff like that. So these bodies are starting to break down a little bit. So when we're evaluating safeties, or when I'm evaluating a safety, I'm going to start looking a lot at their injury history and see how extensive it is, because that's going to also give me an idea of how much shelf life do I really have left out of this guy. Because obviously we're going to need to bring them in, acclimate them, because safety play, it's not just about the system that you're in, it's also about the players that play around you, to be able to have the trust and faith of those players around you, right? So it's going to take a little bit of time. So if I need that little bit of time, how much extra time am I going to have with this guy's injury history? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and this was something that usually comes up too with running backs, right? Which I told you I would pull this up, which I had to go back to the article to pull it up. But
yes,
running back, running back is
my homework.
Running back is the most dangerous position. It averages by far like twice as many injuries as any other position group in the NFL.
So what was the next one?
The very next one, believe it or not, is defensive tackle. Safety's up there, but it's not, because it is, right? But what you're talking about with the angles, the size, especially all that. Now, some of this data that they're pulling from is also older, and so safety has become a more dangerous position more recently.
Yeah, and so one thing that I do want to get away from also is not just like being hinged upon like how many games did a guy miss because of an injury. You know what I mean? Like just because he may not be missing games, but he might have picked up an injury in week 3 that is now lingering and affecting him for the next 3 or 4 weeks. You know what I mean? So you need to dig into beat reporters, the weekly injury reports, and look at that and start to read those things, because that's pulling from games missed.
That's a good point. That's a good point. But in this data is pulling directly from injured reserve players.
There you go.
So players that are placed on the injured reserve, which running back is by far, it's not even close. It's the highest.
Yeah, so we're talking injuries that are going to be lasting 4 weeks.
Right.
Safeties is like I got a banged up shoulder. I twisted my knee like 2 weeks ago, like while I was under a pile. It's just like it's stuff like that starts to build up. I had a stinger after I tried to meet some fullback in the hole or something. I don't know, whatever. Any of the things that happen as a safety. That's why getting past just games missed and looking at those logs and getting into the beat reporters of a team or a local school or whatever to be able to see exactly what injuries were reported, because that can also bring a lot of information to you of what you're seeing on film. If you're seeing a guy who like early in the season is, playing with a ton of burst, and is really willing to come in and lay his shoulder in to squeeze angles and squeeze blocks down and squeeze holes and stuff like that. And, 4 or 5 weeks later, he's not doing that. I would think, like, is there a shoulder injury or something that's preventing him from wanting to be as physical as he already was showing to be? Or was it because they were playing an earlier schedule? He's like earlier on against some smaller bodies that he could just dominate or whatever. Like, I don't know. There's just like questions that you got to ask as you're going through. So when we're talking about context, that's a great example of it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because if I'm looking at a guy in one game early in the year, I'm watching him and he takes this really great angle, makes a tackle, awesome. I'm like, all right, put that down. And then, very similar situation, he misses the tackle because he under pursues it. If I don't see that he's got an injury history or he's dealing with like a stinger or something that week, I'm going to take that as, oh, he's inconsistent, instinct issue, right?
Yeah,
and that's where the context. Right. That's where the context comes in, where it's like understanding where this is. We were talking about this too. I think you were asking, is there a place that has all these injuries documented? And I'm like, no, dude, get on Twitter. It's the only way to find all this stuff, honestly, unless you have Blesto or something and you just got crazy access. But anyways.
No, that's honestly the way that I've told, the best way that I found, and you said it, I went to Twitter, went to the search function. I literally just search the player's name and then the word injury, and then I just scroll. I go to like latest, and then I go all the way down to the very bottom. Sometimes like it really is a pain in the ass to scroll. Like who was I looking at? He's not even that old of a player, Jordan Whitehead, who's like a 6th-year player, right? And I'm scrolling through because it's 6 years worth of tweets, having to get to the bottom 2. But it's like you need the information, man.
Yeah, and the beat reporters, they all put the tweets out, and so you can, a lot of times with these guys, you can go all the way back to high school, right on Twitter, which is a super handy tool when you're trying to put an injury history together. But anyways, I think the last thing that we wanted to kind of get into was, where do we think this position is headed? Because the game is constantly evolving. And one of the things that you do that makes you a great football team, a great football evaluator, all of those different things, is you look and you understand where the direction of the league is going with safeties, with any position group, and it's getting ahead of the curve. We'll see Jalen Petrie last year was the result of this 3 safety match covers type stuff, where you want a guy that's basically an extra linebacker, but he's a safety, and has that coverage ability, has that range, that versatility to do a bunch of different things on the field. Isaiah Simmons was probably an early standby of that thing, where he's really more of a linebacker edge rusher, but he has the safety ability too, right?
8 years too early. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, where he can move all around the field and play a bunch of different positions. Micah Parsons, not really safety, but getting into that range too, where sometimes you can drop him into a bunch of different things.
Yeah,
so that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, looking at the evolution of that position, safety specifically. So when we were talking about how these match quarters systems have proliferated through the NFL, right? And there was a great pod, I want to say it was last week or the week before, where on the Athletic Show, Robert Mays and Nate Tice were talking about some of this stuff with match quarters, and they were talking about why the Bills defense, they were so rated so high, but just don't perform well in the playoffs, right? And a lot of what that system does is squeeze average and below average quarterbacks, but elite quarterbacks find answers, especially when you play that statically and you do it at such a high percentage and you're not switching it up a whole ton or a whole lot. So I wonder if what this felt like was more of these match quarters were not a solution, but more of a Band-Aid to provide us some time to get some better answers to these systems. And I wonder if you are going to see actually kind of what we were talking about, some more of real 3 safety systems as, if not base units, their first sub package. You know what I mean? To be able to combat some of these looks that you're going to start getting of teams going into heavy 12 and 13 personnel looks, but to use them for passing advantage, not for as much of a running advantage. You absolutely gain yourself numbers advantages in the run game until teams start to respond and match it differently. But if you're able to match these things with 3 safeties, specifically 2 body types that are great run defenders, I mean, that could be a solid option going forward. Just in the safety position, which is actually a really great place to look for answers because they don't cost as much.
That's great. Yeah, that's a great point. And that's the other thing too, right? Is roster building isn't just about putting together the best players that you possibly can. It's about putting the best players that you can under
for the price that you have. Yeah.
Yeah. You got a budget.
Yeah.
Right. And everybody talks about, the salary cap's a myth and all this. Well, no, it's really not. It's not a myth. There's ways you can manipulate it, but
yeah. But eventually it comes back around. It will eventually come back around. It's that people look at the cap year to year, and if you look at the cap every 3 years for teams in terms of how they're having to readjust their relationship to the cap and budgeting, I think that's probably a solid way to look. But again, that's not my area of expertise. So
yeah, that's fair too.
Don't take what I said with that with a grain of salt.
The only thing I have to say is kudos to whoever it is that does the salary cap for the New Orleans Saints. I have no idea how he does it. That is
Oh
absolutely
gosh,
insane.
and now I can't remember his name. Oh my god, I talked about him with Tage and Arjun all the time. God, now I can't remember his name. Oh, it's gonna kill me. They're gonna crucify me. They're gonna crucify me in the group chat, but that's fine. Whatever.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. But
Yes,
it's funny,
shout
I
out
was
to
at the
him because
Tropical
he is
Bowl.
the one who's been keeping them in line forever. That guy's got job
Oh
security
my
in the
God.
NFL forever. He's a wizard.
Yeah, he'll be retiring. He won't be going anywhere.
You know,
And
I
that's
have to look this
like
up.
I was talking when I was at the Tropical Bowl with the Saint Scout, and he brought that up. Like, I think the scouts are just like the people who work for that organization are just so proud they have this guy. They're like, man, they make my job easy. I just go out and I go find guys.
Yeah, well, I
That's
mean,
all I do.
he's fantastic at what he does. And why can't I find this guy's Kai Harley?
Yep, Guy. That's it.
Kai
Harley.
Kai
That's it.
Kai
Kai. Yeah.
Khai Kai Harley. He is fantastic. Mickey loves him, and he's going to be there, and until Mickey's gone, basically, probably.
Probably beyond that.
Guy's got job security.
You come into every season $90 million under the cap, and you somehow manage to squeeze out room to go pay for free agents to come in. That's insane.
Just look at the age of the guys that they restructured this year. It's insane. Like the average age of the guys they restructured is like close to 30 years old. Maybe not. It could be even over.
The Titans are still paying safety Michael Griffin, and he hasn't played since like 2012.
It's like the let's see, God, what's the guy from the Mets that's still getting paid?
Oh yeah. The pitcher, right? He gets $1 million every opening day.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Same. It's the exact same.
Yeah,
exact same position. Same position. But
so you got anything else you want to tackle here on safeties? You feel pretty good? I feel like we got into this one pretty good.
I like that. That was a good little pun there. Use of vocabulary.
That's the dad energy, man. We got to bring the puns.
That'll be the last thing that I'll touch on is tackling specifically, because I think that evaluating a tackler is actually something that is sort of changed here recently, because you have guys that wrap up, and you've got guys that like to hit and don't wrap up. And with all the rules changing to protect ball carriers' heads, try to prevent concussions and things, there is a certain way that you have to wrap up now. And not everybody is great at that still yet. It's still something that's evolving. People are like, it's becoming more prevalent, thank God, because we've got drills and things to try to, help these guys better pick that technique up. But I think that you have to be a wrap-up tackler. I think that that's where space defending comes into, that you had touched on briefly. Because if you cannot wrap up tackle, you cannot be an effective space defender. I've never seen a guy that can't consistently wrap up play in space very well. And then because that's literally what tackling is. Like, you got headhunters. Headhunters are not okay anymore, right? Like, you're going to pull too many penalties. It's too dangerous.
Well, yeah, and it's also just not getting the job done for what we're asking. We're not asking guys to blow guys back two more yards and just like get them on the ground and let's make this a successful play and get to third down. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So when I think of good tackling technique, one of the biggest traits that I think of when I'm looking at that is balance. Do they play with balance as they are approaching the tackling situation? Because playing with balance is going to allow you to react to any of that change of direction type stuff. Now, your athletic ability to be able to like play from balance and then extend and explode, and then your arm length and reach, like those things are going to impact your tackling ability as well. But it all starts off from being arrived in a balanced position.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it.
Playing under control.
Yeah, and having the body control, the discipline when you approach the ball carrier, just to make the play. That's a tough thing to do, especially now with we talked about it already, but the evolution of the receiver position, going to bigger body types, guys that are really good after the catch. That's what's made that so important to me, I think, is watching the evolution of that position. Well, to counter that, I have to have a guy that can just play safety. The last thing is, you sent me a video, really good video from the right before we got on.
Yeah.
Miami Hurricanes.
Mhm.
It was an inside look at recruiting and a recruiting discussion.
They're
And
literally
they were
discussing on
talking
whether or not to offer a safety or not. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a fascinating discussion because you've got one guy talking about, well, he's not an elite athlete, he's this and that. And then you got the defensive coordinator going, he's a safety.
Yeah.
He could play safety. So, that's one. It was kind of funny because one of the things that I wanted to talk about, if we had a guest on today, was the looking at a guy and trying to switch his position right away.
Mm-hmm.
And the specific example that I wanted to use was Kelly Ringo this past year. To me, looks like a free safety. He just has all of the traits and everything that I want in a free safety prospect. But he's never played it.
Mm-hmm.
And so this video that you sent me answered my question literally, because they're talking about that specific thing where they're like, oh, well, people talk about dumping. The safety is a dumping ground. It's not a dumping ground. It's the most important. It's the hardest position to play on the field, on the defense, because you are the back line. You are the last line of defense. And
there's so much processing that goes into it, man.
Right. And so we talk about, he's not a tight end, but he could play safety. Oh, he's not a corner. He can play safety. And they're like, why is this a dumping ground?
Mm-hmm.
And so that I think that answered my question, where it's kind of like, well, that's why we don't project corners as safeties, because, we don't know. We haven't seen him play it.
You can't, some guys can, and you can project some of that, but it's still always just that, right? It's a projection until you get into it. Dude, yeah, your camera is freaking out right now.
I started moving too much, I guess. I'm trying to get it back in focus. I'm trying to make the face. There it goes.
Yeah. I would like to see, it would be cool if we can link that video to the Hurricanes recruiting
in the bio. Yeah, we can do that for sure.
Yeah, put that in the bio of the video.
And it's a very solid, it's a 6-minute video. And I mean, riveting discussion just about,
because you get pushback on both sides.
Yeah, you got offensive coaches, you got defensive coaches talking about it, you got the defensive coordinator, and they're discussing it. And I think that the defensive coordinator there, he made a really great point. And you just have to know how to play safety.
Yeah, so what's he elite at? Playing safety.
He's playing safety. Yeah. He's elite at nothing but playing safety. Yeah. And you can overcome, being a marginal athlete, you can overcome that kind of stuff at that position. It's harder, but you can.
Yeah.
And it's really because you just have to know what you're looking at. You have to know what you're reading. You have to attack. You have to react properly and time everything up. So I think that wraps up the safety position.
Put a bow on it.
You like that?
Yep. I think we're solid. Let's lock it up.
So thank you guys for tuning in. What are you working on next week? Position-wise?
Nah, I'm just messing with you. We're going to wide receivers.
Oh, wide receivers? Okay. So, well, we might go wide receivers. We can
go wherever, man.
Okay. We'll figure this out. We'll figure this out in the week, because I'm trying to think ahead and go, what position are we going to go to next? If
we'll put it out on Twitter here in a couple days, talking about what we'll talk about. Yeah. We had to kind of pivot for this week once we didn't get Mark, so that's okay. We'll get next week.
Yeah. No, let's shout out him out real quick, because he's awesome, dude.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mark Orsak was going to come on the show. He's just dropped out of all media this week. And so he was doing some stuff with the Steelers Depot. He won't be doing that anymore. And it's really just, he has a lot of different projects in the works, so he doesn't need any conflict of interest. So we respect that. He's a great dude. He's always finding ways to give back to this game, and we definitely appreciate him for that. So,
face of the combine, man. You can't compromise that.
Face of the combine. Yeah, see, dude, I said, I saw him at the combine. I said, hey, face of the 40. He goes, it's face of the combine.
Right, man. Get my title right.
I'm like, well, you told me face of the 40, so
it's evolved.
Mr.
Grown.
Ego evolved just like the receiver position.
There you go.
Anyways, man, let's get out of here. Sammy, take us out.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Draft Vogel on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.